Chapter 1. The provocative question: what if two versions of Rome turned their swords against each other? Imagine this. On one side, the legions at the peak of Roman power during the reign of Emperor Trajan or Hadrian, disciplined, organized, and unstoppable. On the other side, the army of Rome in its final days, struggling to hold together a crumbling empire, overrun by barbarians and weakened from within. Would the mighty legions of Rome's golden age still dominate the battlefield? Or would time, decay, and desperation give the dying army a fighting chance? Let us explore every aspect of these two armies, from training and discipline to tactics, weapons, and leadership. And finally answer the question: who would win in a battle between Rome at its strongest and Rome at its weakest? Chapter 2. The glorious legions. Rome at its peak. The Roman legions of the early 2nd century were the most advanced military force in the known world. Each legion was made up of around 5,000 heavily armed, highly trained soldiers, all Roman citizens. They were supported by auxiliary units, specialized troops like archers, cavalry, and light infantry, often recruited from provinces but granted citizenship after service. These legions were organized into cohorts, each with 6 centuries of 80 men. Their tactical flexibility was unmatched. They could form testudos, tortoise formations, break enemy lines with javelins and short swords, and hold ground under immense pressure. Their training was brutal but effective. Every soldier knew how to march, fight, build fortifications, and obey orders without hesitation. The Roman war machine was not just an army, it was a system. It had logistics, supply chains, engineering corps, and even field hospitals. Siege warfare was mastered, and no terrain seemed insurmountable. And above all, discipline. Desertion meant death. Cowardice was punished. Loyalty to the legion and the emperor was absolute. This was the Roman army that conquered Dacia, held the Rhine and Danube, and built the greatest empire the world had ever seen. Chapter 3. The crumbling giant. Rome in decline. Now imagine the Roman army of the late 4th and 5th centuries over 100 years later. The glory was gone. The empire was divided. Corruption ran deep, and the army had changed dramatically. First, citizenship no longer defined the soldier. Most recruits came from barbarian tribes, many of whom had never even seen Rome. Some served willingly, others as semi-forced allies. Legions were smaller, sometimes barely more than 1,000 men, and rarely consisted of fully Roman citizens. Many were foederati, allied troops who owed loyalty more to their chieftains than to the emperor. Tactics became less standardized. Discipline weakened. Training was inconsistent. Some soldiers were still skilled veterans, but many were poorly equipped and lacked the iron will of their predecessors. Logistics also suffered. Supply lines broke down. Fortifications crumbled. Engineering knowledge faded. The once mighty Roman road network fell into disrepair, making rapid troop movement nearly impossible. Even the weapons changed. Chainmail gave way to leather armor, and many soldiers carried weapons supplied by their own tribes rather than standard-issue gear. Worst of all, the army was no longer unified. Commanders often fought among themselves. Usurpations were common. Emperors rose and fell in weeks, and while some generals still showed brilliance, like Aetius, they were exceptions in a sea of decline. In short, by the time Alaric the Goth sacked Rome in 410, the city was defended by an army that could barely defend itself. Chapter 4. The great comparison. Who would prevail? Let us break it down across key categories. Discipline and morale. The peak legions were forged through rigorous training and strict discipline. Every soldier knew his place, his duty, and the consequences of failure. In contrast, the late Roman army struggled with low morale, mutiny, and unclear loyalties. Weapons and armor. Golden Age legions used standardized equipment: heavy shields, gladi short swords, pila javelins, and sturdy chainmail. Late Roman soldiers often wore mismatched armor and wielded foreign weapons, including Germanic axes and Sarmatian lances. Tactics and organization. The cohort system allowed the early legions to adapt quickly in battle. The late army relied more on cavalry and tribal formations, which lacked cohesion and coordination. Cavalry power. While the late army had more cavalry, especially mounted archers and heavy horsemen, they often came from unreliable sources. The earlier legions preferred balanced forces, using cavalry mainly for flanking and pursuit. Leadership. The best Roman commanders of the Golden Age, like Agricola or Trajan, laid with skill and experience. By the end, emperors were often political figures, not warriors, and generals were too busy plotting coups to focus on defense. Recruitment and loyalty. Early legions drew from loyal citizens who saw military service as a path to honor and citizenship. The late army depended on foreign mercenaries, many of whom switched sides when paid better. Chapter 5. The final battle, a clash across time. Let us imagine the ultimate battlefield, somewhere like the plains of northern Italy where both armies have marched to meet each other. The legions of Rome's golden age form up in their classic triplex aces formation, 3 lines of heavily armed infantry, flanked by auxiliary cavalry and supported by archers and skirmishers. Every soldier is in perfect rank and file, shields locked, gladi raised. Opposite them stands the late Roman army, a more chaotic sight. Some units are still disciplined, but many soldiers wear mismatched armor and carry weapons from different cultures. There are Gothic warriors on foot, Allan horsemen, Hunnish archers, and remnants of old Roman units trying to hold the line. The battle begins with a hail of pila, the legendary Roman javelins, flying through the air. The front line of the declining army buckles under the impact. The testudo forms, a wall of shields that advances slowly but powerfully toward the enemy. But this time, something is different. The late Roman cavalry charges hard, trying to break the flanks. Some units panic, others hold firm. Yet, despite their numbers and energy, they lack the training to counter the precise maneuvers of the peak legions. As the battle rages, the discipline of the Golden Age legions shines through. They adapt when flanked, rotate tired troops without breaking formation, and maintain morale even under pressure. Meanwhile, parts of the late Roman army begin to falter. Some units flee, others switch sides mid-battle. By nightfall, the field is littered with the fallen. The standard of Rome flies high once again, not as a symbol of empire, but as a memory of what it once was. Chapter 6. The verdict: who would win? So, who would win in a battle between the legions at Rome's peak and the army during its decline? In short, the legions of the Golden Age would dominate. They were better trained, better organized, and fought with a unity of purpose that had long vanished by the time of Rome's fall. Their tactics, discipline, and equipment gave them a clear edge over an army that had become a patchwork of foreign mercenaries and half-trained conscripts. That said, there were still pockets of excellence in the later Roman army, skilled generals, brave soldiers, and moments of tactical brilliance. But overall, the gap in quality, cohesion, and morale was simply too wide to overcome. Rome fell not because its enemies were stronger, but because it could no longer fight as one. And in this imagined battle, the true victor would be the spirit of the Roman legion, a military machine unmatched in its prime.